Hello to everyone and welcome back for another 5-minute Bible study. If you want a free PDF with all this information on it, you can download it on our website. There's a bunch of resources on the website and there's a lot more people getting on it these days, and so I'm excited about where we can go and grow with that. So check that for new resources pretty much on a daily basis. Today we're talking about Numbers chapter 25 and the outline's already on the website. Our main characters for this chapter are going to be Moses. He's the man who God selected to lead the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt and lead them to the Canaan land, or the promised land, the land that God had promised to give them. And then our next main character is Phinehas. Phinehas is the grandson of Aaron, who was the high priest, but you remember a couple chapters back, he died. And then his son, Eleazar, became the high priest. So Phinehas is Eleazar's son. When did the events of this chapter take place in the history of the world? Well, it'd be approximately 1450 BC. If you remember, the children of Israel were forced to wander in the wilderness for 40 years because of their faithlessness. Those 40 years are now coming to an end, and they're just about to be able to enter Canaan. The Israelite camp has pretty much remained in the same place for the last couple chapters. The Israelites were camped at the border of the Amorites and the Moabites near Pisgah at a place called Shittim, we're told in chapter 25, verse 1. All right, a little bit of a shorter chapter. We've only got 18 verses here. We're just going to deal with kind of one main event, and it's not a good event. Verses 1 through 9 talk about Israel being persuaded to worship Baal of Peor. So the women of Moab befriended the Israelites and enticed them to participate in their idolatrous worship of a false god known as Baal or Baal. And if you're not familiar with him, don't worry, you will be, because his name is mentioned several times, and the Israelites have continual run-ins and problems with worshiping this false god Baal or Baal. God was obviously extremely angry that his people were worshiping a false god and not honoring him, and he told Moses to kill all of the chiefs of Israel who had participated in this idolatry, and then to hang their bodies in the camp so that everyone would be able to see them. In addition, God sent a deadly plague in amongst the people of Israel, and it killed a lot of people. We'll find out how many at the end of this section. As God's commands were being carried out, the chiefs were being killed, people were dying from the plague, and the people were weeping at the tabernacle because of, this terror that had come upon them. An Israelite man very boldly brought a Midianite woman, and one of these idolatrous women, into the camp in the sight of all of the people. And Phinehas, who was the son of Eleazar, the high priest, he was enraged by this man's disrespect for God. And he took a spear, he went to the man's tent, and he stabbed both the man and the woman through the stomach and killed them. And after this, God withdrew the plague, but not before it had killed 24,000 Israelites. That moves us into verses 10 through 15. God honors Phinehas. So the man that Phinehas had killed, his name and kind of his position in the society of Israel is given. His name was Salu, S-A-L-U. He was a chief from the tribe of Simeon. The woman that Phinehas killed, her name was Cosbi. She was the daughter of a tribal leader of Midian. After Phinehas had done this, God spoke with Moses and told him that Phinehas' zeal for his holiness had played a big part in God's wrath being turned back and saving a lot of lives in Israel. The Lord made a covenant with Phinehas, made him some promises and to his household, and promised that the priesthood would continue through him and through his descendants. And then in section number 3, verses 16 through 18, God commands the destruction of the Midianites. So God told Moses to make war with the Midianites, and Moses was to destroy their nation because they had intentionally led God's people into idolatry. And so that is Numbers chapter 25. The Israelites have definitely gotten themselves into some trouble. But this didn't happen by chance. Remember in the last chapter, it was Balaam who convinced King Balak to get the Midianite and Moabite women to entice the Israelites. So that's part of the reason that the punishment on Midian is going to be so strong, is because this was something that they did intentionally. They intentionally led God's people away from him in an effort to destroy the Israelites. And so now for our application section. It is right to be angry about people disrespecting God, especially when that disrespect is done by people who should know better. There is a place in the Christian life for anger and potentially for confrontation. And I think this is important to point out because I think in our culture, specifically in our Christian culture, we tend to stress Christian virtues like gentleness and kindness, and those are good things. But I suspect that our emphasis on those things has caused some to think that an angry Christian is an unloving Christian, and that is not necessarily true. Anger and bold confrontation can be Christian virtues in themselves if they are motivated by a zeal for the holiness of God. And no one illustrates this for us better than Jesus when he entered the temple and he overturned the tables of those who were exploiting a holy place to extort people for personal gain in Matthew chapter 21, verse 12.